Why do so many high achievers struggle with silence? And who are you when you stop performing? You would think that after hard working, building something, solving problems, carrying responsibility, silence would feel like a relief. But for many people, it does not. It feels uncomfortable, restless, even confronting. And that tells us something important. Sometimes the hardest thing for a high achiever is not doing more. It is being still long enough to sense what's happening underneath all that doing. I call that reconnecting with your inner compass. Hello and welcome back to Unbox the podcast. I'm Sahar Palmer, and this season we're exploring the courage to be you. Not as a slogan, but as a real inner process of staying aligned and operating with a higher purpose and ease. Because becoming more fully yourself often means noticing the identities, the habits, the roles that you have built to function in this world. And sometimes those roles become so strong that we forget to step outside them and simply listen to ourselves. Today, I want to talk about something that does not get discussed enough: why high achievers struggle with inner silence. Not outer quiet, but inner silence. That space where there is no task, no urgency, no performance, and no expectation. Just you. And for many people, that is exactly where discomfort begins. Before I continue, I want to thank you all for sending messages to ask after me, my family, and our safety. I'm still in Dubai, I'm not going anywhere, and thankfully, we are safe. Now, let's talk about when silence stops feeling peaceful. We often imagine silence as something soothing, something spiritual or calming, and sometimes it is. But for many high achievers, silence feels unfamiliar because achievement creates momentum. And there's always something to build, something to improve, something to solve, and something to move forward to. Movement becomes normal. Your mind becomes trained to operate in that environment, planning, solving, responding, creating the next step. This is often exactly what makes someone capable and successful. But when everything becomes quiet and the mind suddenly has space, and when the space appears, things surface. Thoughts that were pushed aside, emotions that were postponed, questions that never had the time to appear. Silence reveals what constant activity hides. Let's talk about achievement and identity. Achievement does more than produce results. It creates identity. You become the reliable one, the capable one, the person others turn to when something needs to be handled. Over time, this becomes part of the story you tell yourself about who you are. Your identity becomes connected to movement, to productivity, and connected to responsibility. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when identity becomes tied to constant performance, silence can feel unsettling because silence removes these roles. When there is nothing to fix or deliver in that moment, a deeper question appears: who am I when I'm not performing?
A Mochi moment from Sadie, who writes, I'm not crying, you're crying. This is what I said during my first appointment with my physician at Mochi. because I didn't have to convince him I needed a GLP-1. He understood, and I felt supported, not judged. I came for the weight loss and stayed for the empathy. Thanks, Sadie. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Sadie is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
And that question can feel uncomfortable. If you have never stopped long enough to explore it, it will feel really uncomfortable. Now, let's talk about the difference between direction and awareness. You might notice something important here. Achievement trains us to move forward. There's always a goal, a deadline, a next step. But silence does something different. Silence doesn't push you forward. It asks you to notice what is already there. And this is the real difference. Achievement gives you direction. Silence gives you awareness. Direction moves life forward. Awareness tells you whether the direction still reflects who you truly are. Both are necessary, but many people spend years enforcing direction without ever stopping long enough to develop awareness. So, what keeps the mind moving? High achievers often have very active minds. Their minds are trained to analyze situations quickly and anticipate problems before they happen. That ability is a strength, but it can also mean that the mind doesn't easily switch off. Even when there is nothing that needs to be solved, the mind keeps searching for something to improve, overthinking, planning future scenarios, replaying conversations, or trying to anticipate the next challenge. So when silence appears, the mind fills it with activity. Not because something is wrong, but because that is what it has been trained to do. That is how our brains work when they're not being guided. Here is what silence reveals. Silence creates space, and in that space, things surface. Sometimes it's a realization that you're tired. Sometimes it's an emotion that you've never had time to acknowledge or process. Sometimes it's a quiet awareness that something in your life no longer feels aligned, and you begin to question things. Silence does not create these things. In fact, it reveals them. That is why it can feel uncomfortable. But it is also where deeper self-awareness begins. We're talking about your inner compass, your intuition, and getting connected and developing your inner clarity. This is where intuition becomes clearer. Intuition rarely appears in noise. It appears in quiet moments, like a subtle thought, a gentle sense of knowing, a small shift in perspective. When life is constantly filled with activity, those signals are easy to miss. But when silence becomes part of your life, intuition has space to appear. Not as something mystical, but as grounded clarity, a deeper understanding of what feels right. There is a relationship between silence and courage. And this is where the theme of this season becomes important. The courage to be you. Because sometimes the courage to be yourself begins with something very simple. Being willing to sit in silence long enough to listen. Listen to your thoughts, your emotions, your inner guidance, and to notice whether the life you're building still reflects who you truly are now. Silence is not the opposite of achievement. It is what helps achievement remain aligned with who you are becoming. If silence feels uncomfortable to you, that doesn't mean something is wrong. It simply means that you're meeting a deeper part of yourself. Achievement moves forward. Silence helps you understand where you're going. And when those two work together, something powerful happens. You begin to move through life with both clarity and awareness, not just momentum. Thank you for spending this time with me on Unbox the podcast. If what you heard today touched your heart, follow or subscribe. And if a leader in your life needs to hear this conversation, please share it with them. You never know whose life might change. You will find more tools to guide yourself in the form of ebooks, online courses on my website, saharhunaidi.com. Until next Tuesday, have the courage to be you. Show up and stay true.